Forever Spooky on YouTube.
It was a cold autumn day when my friends and I decided to visit a museum that was rumored to have a collection of haunted artifacts. I was excited to explore the museum, but I was also a bit skeptical about the existence of ghosts and haunted objects. As we walked through the museum, my friends eagerly examined every exhibit, reading every plaque and trying to sense any presence of paranormal activity. I walked alongside them, listening to their tales of ghost sightings and unexplainable events, but I remained unconvinced. It wasn't until we reached a display of old dolls that things began to get strange. My friend Jake, who was usually the most skeptical of the group, suddenly became intrigued by a particularly creepy-looking porcelain doll. He walked up to the glass case and stared at it intently. "What's the big deal?" I asked, rolling my eyes. "I don't know," Jake said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's just something about this doll that's giving me the creeps." Before any of us could say anything else, Jake reached out and tapped the glass case. "Come on, you haunted little thing," he said, a hint of sarcasm in his voice. "Give us a sign." At first, nothing happened. But as we walked away from the doll exhibit, we began to notice strange things happening all around us. The lights flickered, and we heard footsteps echoing through the halls. We all felt a chill run down our spines. "This is really freaking me out," I said, my voice trembling. Jake, who had been silent since our encounter with the doll, suddenly spoke up. "I think we need to go back to that doll," he said. "What? Why?" I asked, feeling uneasy. "I don't know," Jake said, his voice low. "I just have this feeling that something's not right. We need to see the doll again." Reluctantly, we followed Jake back to the doll exhibit. As we approached the glass case, we saw that the doll had moved. Its head was now turned towards us, and its eyes seemed to be following our every move. "It's probably just a trick of the light," I said, trying to sound confident. But then something even stranger happened. The doll's mouth appeared to be moving and a low, eerie breeze flowed through the room. "Okay, that's it," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm out of here." As I turned to leave, I felt a cold hand grab my shoulder. I screamed and spun around, but there was no one there. My friends rushed to my side, but I couldn't stop myself from trembling. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about the haunted doll. I researched its history and discovered that it had been owned by a girl who had passed away under mysterious circumstances. The doll was said to be cursed, and many who taunted it had encountered mysterious experiences. I started having nightmares about the doll, and I could feel its presence everywhere I went. I knew that I needed to do something, so I returned to the museum and spoke to the curator. To my surprise, the curator was not at all surprised by my story. He advised me to apologize to the doll and showed me a room filled with other haunted artifacts. I realized that there was so much more to the world than I had ever imagined. As I left the museum, I knew that I would never forget the experience. Although the strange occurrences stopped, I will forever be a believer of the paranormal.
Forever Spooky on YouTube.
I've always been a bit of a collector. I love going to thrift stores and antique shops, looking for interesting pieces to add to my collection. And that's how I came across the doll. It was a beautiful porcelain doll, with long curly hair and a frilly dress. It was in perfect condition, and I couldn't believe my luck when I saw the price. I knew I had to have it. But as soon as I brought it home, I could tell that something was off. My wife and kids were immediately creeped out by it, and my friends joked that it looked like something out of a horror movie. But I brushed off their concerns. I didn't believe in ghosts or hauntings, and I thought they were all being ridiculous. That is, until strange things began to happen. At first, it was small things. The doll would move from one shelf to another, or its eyes would seem to follow me around the room. I dismissed it as my imagination, or maybe just a prank from one of my kids. But then, things started to get more sinister. I would wake up in the middle of the night and hear whispering in the darkness, its voice soft and sweet, but somehow menacing at the same time. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. I couldn't stop thinking about it and I was constantly on edge. I decided to do some research on the doll. I discovered that it was custom made by a doll maker back in the 1950s. Some people even claimed that those dolls were possessed. I scoffed at the idea, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something wrong with the doll. As time went on, the doll's presence in my home became more oppressive. I felt like it was watching me all the time, and I couldn't escape its gaze. And then, one night, something truly terrifying happened. I heard a scream coming from my son's room. He claimed the doll stood at the foot of his bed, its eyes glowing in the darkness with its fingers reaching out to touch him. I don't know whether he just had a nightmare or if there was something more to it. When we went to check on the doll in the living room, we found that it had fallen off the shelf. The next morning, I decided that enough was enough. I took the doll to a priest, who blessed it and performed a cleansing on my home. I don't know if it was the blessing or just the placebo effect, but the strange occurrences stopped after that. Despite its high value, I donated the doll back to the shop I had bought it from and shared my experience with them. Looking back, I realize how foolish I was to ignore the signs. I should have listened to my family and friends, and trusted my instincts when something seemed off. I don't know what would have happened if I had continued to ignore the doll. All I know is, I never want to go through something like that, ever again.